Hi. Today we're going to talk about the writings of Sergei Nechayev, and I'm going to read to you Sergei Nechayev's Revolutionary Catechism, or the Revolutionary Catechism, written in 1869. Nechayev is a Russian revolutionary, a political nihilist, and an anarchist. He lives from 1847 to 1842, and he dies in prison. He dies in the #1 cell of the most notorious prison in Russia, the Peter and Paul Fortress. Sergei Nechayev is one of the most radical anarchists or political nihilists of his day. He's one of the most dedicated, passionate, and arguably destructive to the anarchist movement in general. Although his ideas continue to inspire revolutionaries right up until this day, arguably because of their purity, or perhaps because of their effectiveness, because of their passion and persuasion. So, we begin. And the first section is the duties of the revolutionary towards himself. The revolutionary is a doomed man. He has no personal interests, no business affairs, no emotions, no attachments, no property, and no name. Everything in him is wholly absorbed in the single thought and the single passion for revolution. So, and this is a code that Nechayev lives and dies by. In fact, while he's in prison, he actually is able to convince his prison guards to connect him with other revolutionary organizations, one of which offers to free him. And actually they planned the freeing of Nechayev together, Nechayev and this organization. But Nechayev realizes that it's more worthwhile for the revolution in Russia, which he's trying to start here, for the resources that could be used to free him to instead be used to try to assassinate the Tsar. And indeed, the Tsar of Russia is assassinated not long thereafter. So, the revolutionary is a single-mindedly focused individual on bringing out revolution. He has to assume as soon as he joins this movement, or as soon as she joins this movement, that he or she is dead. They are going to die in the process of trying to create this revolution. The revolutionary knows that in the very depths of his being, not only in words, but also in deeds, he has broken all the bonds which tie him to the social order and the civilized world within all its laws, moralities, customs, and with all its generally accepted conventions. He is their implacable enemy, and if he continues to live with them, it is only in order to destroy them more speedily. So, and here again, right off the bat, you see the political nihilism. Nihilism, you could say, roughly translates into nothingism, a philosophy sort of born out of the late 1800s and early 1900s, born out of ideas like Friedrich Nietzsche, like Sergei Nechayev, and also they developed sort of alongside existentialist ideas, also alongside both anarchist and communist ideas. And all of these ideas begin, in my opinion, from the idea that there is no God, arguably. I mean, you have Dostoevsky, who talks about, he writes existentially, and he also supports Catholicism. You have Kierkegaard, who's one of the original existentialists, and he is a very religious man. But in general, essentially, this existentialist and then anarchist and nihilistic and communistic ideologies, they begin with this idea that if there's no God, then perhaps there's no inherent meaning to life. And if also Hegel is wrong in that world history is not dictated by these great men or these great individuals who are propelled by this world spirit, right? This pseudo-deity that also is driving human change. If none of this is true, right, then the only meaning in life is to be made by the individual humans making decisions, perhaps to change the world. Right? And so, from this standpoint, Nechayev's anarchism or political nihilism is essentially saying that if there really is nothing but us, then perhaps the most meaningful thing a person can do is sacrifice themselves for social change. In this case, an anarchist, communistic, socialist revolution that will truly benefit the majority of Russians. And remember, Russia at this time, in the mid to late 1800s, has some of the greatest social stratification in the world. You have a population that's recently freed from serfdom, from slavery. You have a massive majority of the people in Russia are poor peasants, ruled over by a very small number of noble elites, which is also why Russia, throughout its history, and particularly beginning in the 1800s, is one of the most radically revolutionary societies in the world. Russia is just a great study for anyone interested in revolutionary philosophy. So, out of this, Nechayev's ideas are born, and henceforth he says that really the most meaningful thing a person can do is dedicate themselves and then sacrifice themselves to the total destruction, here's your political nihilism, the destruction of society as it is right now, so that you can then rebuild out of its ashes a society that will truly benefit the majority. The revolutionary despises all doctrines and refuses to accept the mundane sciences, leaving them for future generations. He knows only one science, the science of destruction. For this reason, but only for this reason, he will study mechanics, physics, chemistry, and perhaps medicine. So the only reason really to study anything besides revolutionary theory and ideology is to study things so you can then carry out the revolution. So you carry out mechanics, physics, and chemistry so you can build the weapons and the explosives necessary for the revolution, and medicine so you can heal your fallen comrades. But all day and all night he studies the vital science of human beings, their characteristics and circumstances, and all the phenomena of the present social order. The object is perpetually the same, the surest and quickest way of destroying the whole filthy order. So, psychology, sociology, not named at this point necessarily, but these are things to study so you can further understand the nuances of the human condition. You study history and current events and politics so you can understand the situation as it is, but all of these studies are directed towards the one singular goal of the revolution, the destruction of the current social order. And here you can see, or I see it at any rate, through Nechayev's ideas, you can see the doctrines of revolutionaries throughout modern history and in our current times. And this is a totally different origin of revolutionary thought. And in this case, the militant Islamicism of ISIS. What drives them to commit what everybody else sees as such horrifying acts, and I also think they're horrifying acts, there's no doubt about that, but what drives them to do this is that they are single-mindedly dedicated to the reorganization of the entire social order. And here you see this political nihilism with its origins in many ways in folks like Sergei Nechayev in revolutionary Russia. The revolutionary despises public opinion. He despises and hates the existing social morality and all its manifestations. For him, morality is everything which contributes to the triumph of the revolution. Immoral and criminal is everything that stands in its way. So your morality is, in Nechayev's eyes, if you are a revolutionary, to do everything and believe everything that will promote the revolution. Kill, cheat, lie, you name it. It's okay as long as it's for the revolution. On the other side of that, any existing morality that stands in society at his time, Nechayev believes in one way or another, and there's a lot of evidence for this, influence the maintenance of the social order, right? So religion helps keep people docile and obedient. Government helps keep people docile and obedient. The doctrines of much of socialism that seeks to work within the current systems of government. Nechayev believes that these create obedience. They all must be driven from existence. And the only morality is the revolutionary morality. The revolutionary is a dedicated man, merciless toward the state and towards the educated classes. And he can expect no mercy from them. Between him and them there exists, declared or concealed, a relentless and irreconcilable war to the death. He must accustom himself to torture. The revolutionary needs to be expected to be locked up, to be tortured, to be exiled. All of these things Nechayev himself experiences in his life. If there is one thing you can say about this man, regardless of the nefariousness perhaps of his deeds or maybe of his philosophy, is that he lives by his own ideology. It's almost like he uses his persecution, he uses his imprisonment in any way that he can to further his revolutionary ideology. And he does not shrink from the beatings and the torture and the exile and the imprisonment. Tyrannical towards himself, he must be tyrannical towards others. All the gentle and enervating sentiments of kinship and love, friendship, gratitude, and even honor must be suppressed in him and give place to the cold and single-minded passion for revolution. For him, there exists only one pleasure, one consolation, one reward, one satisfaction, the success of the revolution. Night and day he must have but one thought, one aim, merciless destruction. Striving cold-bloodedly and indefatigably towards this end, he must be prepared to destroy himself and destroy with his own hands everything that stands in the path of the revolution. And kinship, friendship, all bad, all distracts people from the purpose of revolution. And you can see this in Nechayev's life. And for example, there's a woman, Vera Zasulich, that Nechayev pledges his love to and tries to get her to move with him to Switzerland after the first time that he's exiled, or the first time that he flees because he's afraid he's going to be exiled. And he tries to get her to come with him. She won't. But then he purposefully writes her a badly coded letter so that she will then be caught with it, imprisoned, abused, and so that in Nechayev's mind she will hopefully become more radicalized and serve the revolution. So really, there's no ends to the single-minded focus of Nechayev for revolution, truly Machiavellian in its sense, and that the end justifies the means. The nature of the true revolutionary excludes all sentimentality, romanticism, infatuation, and exaltation. All private hatred and revenge must also be excluded. Revolutionary passion, practiced at every moment of the day until it becomes a habit, is to be employed with cold calculation. At all times and in all places, the revolutionary must obey not his personal impulses, but only those which serve the cause of the revolution. Right? Once again, he won't let himself be broken out of prison because he thinks the revolutionary funds will be better spent elsewhere. Forget everything but the revolution. Next section, the relations of the revolutionary towards his comrades. The revolutionary can have no friendship or attachment except for those who have proved by their actions that they, like him, are dedicated to revolution. The degree of friendship, devotion, obligation towards such a comrade is determined solely by the degree of his usefulness to the cause of total revolutionary destruction. Once again, no friends. Like Nechayev, he actually ends up in prison because he helps murder one of his former associates. He has within his revolutionary circle, Nechayev, so interesting in the amount of lies that he is able to purposefully concoct to tell to promote his revolutionary ideas. He claims that he is the leader of a worldwide revolutionary organization that doesn't even exist, just so he can try to attract more followers. He claims to have 1 million followers around the world, and many, many, many in Russia alone. He doesn't. He has a few hundred people that follow him. But this helps him arguably become more popular, and on the other side, it makes the czars in Russia fear him, which eventually leads to his life sentence. So his associate, his name is I. Ivanov. Now, Ivanov gets in a disagreement with Nechayev about what they should be publishing or how much they should be publishing. Because remember, back in the day, the revolutionary propaganda machine was ink and paper, as opposed to today's revolutionary machine, which seems to be internet. Ivanov disagrees with Nechayev. Ivanov quits the organization. Nechayev then follows him, I mean, not necessarily that night, but tracks him down in the night with a group of his revolutionary comrades. They beat him, strangle him, shoot him, and then stuff his dead body through a hole in the ice. So these are the lengths that Nechayev is willing to go against his own associates for the furtherance of the revolution. He also, when he's a student leader, he creates this student revolutionary organization. It has clandestine candlelight meetings, next to the pictures of Robespierre and Saint-Just, the leaders of the Reign of Terror in the French Revolution, also people who will go to any means for the purposes of their revolutionary reorganization of society. And so at the end of these candlelight meetings, he has all of these students, I think there's 93 of them that actually sign a petition saying that they want the freedom of assembly for students in Russia. Nechayev won't tell them what he's going to do with the petition now. After they sign it, he gives it to the police. He gives the petition to the police with these students' names on it, expressly for the purpose of hoping to get these students arrested, exiled, tortured, so that they will be more radicalized and become more revolutionary. So, for Nechayev, the revolutionary has no friends. He has no love. He has no lovers. He has no family. He has one thing: revolution. It is superfluous to speak of solidarity among revolutionaries. The whole strength of revolutionary work lies in this. Comrades who possess the same revolutionary passion and understanding should, as much as possible, deliberate all important matters together and come to unanimous conclusions. When the plan is finally decided upon, then the revolutionary must rely solely on himself. In carrying out acts of destruction, each one should act alone, never running to another for advice and assistance, except when these are necessary for the furtherance of the plan. And so here you see Nechayev hatching the seed of the modern revolutionary organization with many independent cells working independently of each other. And so that, yes, you plan together with the people who are truly dedicated, and you make unanimous decisions, acting as equals, which is part of the anarchist socialist ideology, democratic ideology as well. But then when it comes time to act, you split up. You disperse so that no one needs to rely on another. No one needs to ask another for advice. And this makes your revolutionary organization much more effective because each individual can act alone. All revolutionaries should have under them second or third degree revolutionaries, i.e. comrades who are not completely initiated. These should be regarded as part of the common revolutionary capital placed at his disposal to use as the revolutionary wants to. This capital should, of course, be spent as economically as possible in order to derive from it the greatest profit. The real revolutionary should regard himself as capital, consecrated to the triumph of the revolution. However, he may not personally and alone dispose of that capital without the unanimous consent of the fully initiated comrades. So you see, he's creating a structure here for the revolution as he sees it. You have a core of 100% dedicated revolutionaries. And then each revolutionary has subservient revolutionaries beneath him or her that they use as they need to for the revolution. And it's interesting here that he talks about not using this capital for their own needs. And Nechayev himself, based on his ideology, leads the life of an ascetic. Right? And Nechayev actually, later on in his life, receives a fairly substantial amount of money from an anarchist who died to promote his ideology and promote the revolution. And Nechayev is very careful, it seems, not to spend any of that money on himself and only to use it for the furtherance of his revolutionary purposes. He lives the life of a pauper. He does live by his own ideas. When a comrade is in danger and a question arises whether he should be saved or not saved, the decision must not be arrived at on the basis of sentiment, but solely in the interest of the revolutionary cause. Therefore, it is necessary to weigh carefully the usefulness of the comrade against the expenditure of revolutionary forces necessary to save him, and the decision must be made accordingly. Here again, you see Nechayev living by his own words. When people want to save him, he says no. Use the money to kill the Tsar. And it works. The relations of the revolutionary towards society. Next section. The new member, having given proof of his loyalty, not by words, but by deeds, can be received into the society only by the unanimous agreement of all members. You see some structural organization here. The revolutionary enters the world of the state, of the privileged classes, of the so-called civilization, and he lives in this world only for the purpose of bringing about its speedy and total destruction. He is not a revolutionary if he has any sympathy for this world. He should not hesitate to destroy any position, any place, or any man in this world. He must hate everyone and everything in it with equal hatred. All the worse for him is if he has any relations with parents, friends, or lovers. He is no longer a revolutionary if he is swayed by these relationships. 100% dedication, right? And it's also interesting that Nechayev suggests that the revolutionaries go out into the political world, the business world, make connections, work themselves into these organizations so that then they will be easier to destroy, right? A government is much easier to destroy from within, according to Nechayev's doctrine, than it is from without. And not a stupid presumption. Aiming at implacable revolution, the revolutionary may and frequently must live within society, pretending to be completely different from what he really is. For he must penetrate everywhere, into all the higher and middle classes, into the houses of commerce, the churches, and the places of the aristocracy, and into the worlds of the bureaucracy and literature and the military, and also into the third division in the winter palace of the Tsar. The third division is the secret police created by Tsar Nicholas in 1826, and their specific purpose is to monitor and report on all the revolutionary groups in Russia, right? And so, for a modern revolutionary aiming at following Nechayev's model, the best jobs to get are government jobs, military jobs, technology jobs, and business jobs, because these are the institutions that keep the current society going, and only from within them can you turn them against each other and destroy them. This filthy social order can be split up into several categories. The first category comprises those who must be condemned to death without delay. Comrades should compile a list of those to be condemned according to the relative gravity of their crimes, and the executions should be carried out according to the prepared order. Okay, pretty straightforward there. When a list of those who are condemned is made and the order of execution is prepared, no private sense of outrage should be considered, nor is it necessary to pay attention to the hatred provoked by these people among the comrades or the people. Hatred and the sense of outrage may even be useful insofar as they incite the masses to revolt. It is necessary to be guided only by the relative usefulness of these executions for the sake of the revolution. And so he says, not only must you ignore love and kindness and comradeship, but you must also ignore your hatred. The hatred makes the revolutionary ineffective. If you execute somebody simply because they're hated by you or hated by the people, then that does not necessarily aid the revolution. In fact, it might be a better idea to leave a hated figure alive, because they will then engender more hatred for the system by the masses. Above all, those who are especially inimical to the revolutionary organization must be destroyed. Their violent and sudden deaths will produce the utmost panic in the government, depriving it of its will to action by removing the cleverest and most energetic supporters. So at the top of the list are the people who are the greatest danger to the revolutionary organization. The second group comprises those who will be spared for the time being in order that, by a series of monstrous acts, they may drive the people into inevitable revolt. So here you go. Sometimes the worst people in the government or in business or in society, they need to be kept alive. And they need to be kept alive because all they do is engender more hatred, which is positive for the revolution, as far as Nechayev is concerned. The third category consists of a great many brutes in high positions, distinguished neither by their cleverness nor their energy, while enjoying riches, influence, power, and high positions by virtue of their rank. These must be exploited in every possible way. They must be implicated and embroiled in our affairs. Their dirty secrets must be ferreted out, and they must be transformed into slaves. Their power, influence, and connections, their wealth, and their energy will form an inexhaustible treasure and a precious help in all of our undertakings. Right? So, the folks who are very powerful by nature of rank or by nature of birth or inheritance, right? But not by cleverness, not by intelligence, not by merit, but that do have lots of power within the social order. What the revolutionaries want to do is draw them in through lies and deceit and duplicity, and to become close to these individuals, form ties between the revolutionaries and these individuals, and then find out all of the nastiest information you can about these individuals so that you can then blackmail them for the sake of the revolution. Not a stupid man. The fourth category comprises ambitious office holders and liberals of various shades of opinion. The revolutionary must pretend to collaborate with them, blindly following them, while at the same time prying out their secrets until they are completely, in his power. They must be so compromised that there is no way out for them, and then they can be used to create disorder in the state. And so the liberals, so these are your democratically minded folks, but that don't go nearly left enough to be anarchist. These folks you pretend to agree with, you pretend to support. Once again, you get involved in their organizations and you try to draw them into some of the simpler forms of your revolutionary organization, your less fanatical forms of your revolutionary organization. But you only do this, and you pretend to follow their ideas while you're doing this, looking up to them, promoting their political causes. But the only reason to do this is so you can then get lots of nasty information on these folks, so then you can blackmail them into becoming tools for the ultimate revolution. The fifth category consists of those doctrinaires, conspirators, and revolutionists who cut a great figure on paper or in their cliques. They must be constantly driven on to make compromising declarations. As a result, the majority of them will be destroyed, while a minority will become genuine revolutionaries. And so once again, you use whatever means at your disposal, perhaps deceit, duplicitousness, to drive members within your own ranks who are not revolutionary enough into greater and greater revolutionary action. And the interesting thing here is Nechayev's greatest supporter among the anarchist community is Mikhail Bakunin. Bakunin loves Nechayev, it seems like, looks at him as perhaps a child prodigy, as emblematic of the youth, revolutionary youth in Russia, and Nechayev doesn't believe Bakunin's revolutionary enough. And so Nechayev starts collecting letters that might make Bakunin look bad, that might implicate him to the authorities. And then eventually Nechayev speaks out publicly against Bakunin, trying to push him into being more revolutionary. And for the anarchist movement in the middle of the 1800s and later in the 1800s, this is actually this is really problematic because Nechayev's involvement with Bakunin ended up getting both of them kicked out of the first Working Men's International, which is the organization that has the broadest support for both anarchist and socialist ideas in the 1800s. The sixth category is especially important: women. They can be divided into three main groups. First, those frivolous, thoughtless, and vapid women, who we shall use as we use the third and fourth category of men. So get close to them and use them for your own purposes, blackmail them into becoming tools of the revolution. Second, women who are ardent, capable, and devoted, but whom do not belong to us because they have not yet achieved a passionless and austere revolutionary understanding. So these women are more likely to have other connections, family, friends, that perhaps distract them from the complete dedication to the revolution and the complete renunciation of any other parts of their lives. And so these are the women that you work with, but you try to compromise in ways that will drive them to become even more revolutionary. And then he says, finally, there are women who are completely on our side, i.e. those who are wholly dedicated and who have accepted our program in its entirety. We should regard these women as the most valuable of our treasures. Without their help, we will never succeed. So, Nechayev is also a believer in the equality between genders, as most of the anarchists are. The attitude of the society towards the people. Next section. The society has no aim other than the complete liberation and happiness of the masses. And so this society is his revolutionary program, i.e. of the people who live by manual labor. So, number one priority is to make equal the people who work for a living, make them happy, the majority. Convinced that their emancipation and the achievement of this happiness can only come about as a result of an all-destroying popular revolt, the society will use all its resources and energy towards increasing and intensifying the evils and miseries of the people until at last their patience is exhausted and they are driven to a general uprising. Okay, so on the one hand, right, the people are the goal of the revolution, right? They are the folks who are trying to emancipate from the burdens of aristocracy and burgeoning capitalism, which is starting in small ways in Russia at this point. Mostly the aristocracy, the church, they need to be freed from these institutions. But in order to make them free, they must first rise up. And in order to make them rise up, you must first help make their lives horrifyingly miserable. So, in order to free the people, you must first increase the intensity of their misery. And when they can't take any more, they will then rise up. By a revolution, the society does not mean an orderly revolt according to the classic Western model, i.e. American Revolution, French Revolution, revolutions of 1848. Some respects they're orderly, some respects they're not. A revolt which always stops short of attacking the rights of property and the traditional social systems of so-called civilization and morality. Up until now, such a revolution has always limited itself to the overthrow of one political form in order to replace it by another, thereby attempting to bring about a so-called revolutionary state. The only form of revolution beneficial to the people is one which destroys the entire state to the roots and exterminated all the state traditions, institutions, and classes in Russia. And in this respect, Nechayev makes a very good point about modern revolutions. In the French Revolution and the American Revolution, you essentially overthrow one upper class and replace it with another upper class. You overthrow the class of the aristocracy and you replace it with the class of the bourgeoisie, of the wealthy. And so Nechayev says that's not enough, right? Any institutions, any traditions that support the use of one class by another, or the exploitation of one group of people by another, particularly of the majority by a minority, must be destroyed. And that's where his political nihilism comes from. He says if you really want to free the people, you don't just want to behead the king and establish a democracy and leave private property intact. You want to destroy the entire system and start afresh with something that can create material equality for everyone. With this end in view, the society therefore refuses to impose any new organization from above. Very interesting point. Any future organization will doubtless work its way through the movement and life of the people, but this is a matter for future generations to decide. Our task is terrible, total, universal, and merciless destruction. So, Nechayev doesn't even want to write down in this document, well, he does in some others, what the new social order is going to look like. He says, the first thing that has to happen if we want a revolution is simply to destroy. And that's what his intention is. He says if we totally destroy all of the government institutions, all of the economic institutions, all of the religious institutions, then society can, on its own, based in the people, create another form of government that will be more equal, right? But he doesn't want to speculate on what that might look like. And in part, he doesn't want to speculate on that because he doesn't want to suggest that another group of people is going to come in and take over, which is what Lenin does, which has some pretty catastrophic consequences for the Russians. He just says, let's just burn it all down to the ground and let the people pick up the pieces and make something better. Therefore, in drawing closer to the people, we must above all make common cause with those elements of the masses which, since the foundation of the state of Muscovy, have never ceased to protest, not only in words but in deeds, against everything directly or indirectly connected with the state, against the nobility, the bureaucracy, the clergy, the traders, or the parasitic kulaks, which are affluent farmers. We must unite with the adventurous tribes of brigands, who are the only genuine revolutionaries in Russia. And these brigands he's talking about are what we know in the West as the thieves' world. Like Russia, because of its particular poverty and the almost universal oppressive nature of the structure of its government on the vast majority of its serf population. Because of these things, Russia births criminal organizations that, unlike in most other civilizations in the world, they create a fairly cohesive moral and ethical structure separate from that of the state, where they oftentimes you see them compared to Robin Hoods in Russia, where their goal is essentially to take from the nobility. Remember, the nobles own all of the property. So every act of theft by a brigand is actually an act of revolution in this respect. And so Nechayev actually looks to this fairly cohesive culture of thievery and banditry, which also, as a culture, seeks to help out much of the poor of Russia. Nechayev looks to these folks as the most natural revolutionary group in Russia to work from as a base. And lastly, to weld the people into a single, unconquerable, and all-destructive force. This is our aim, our conspiracy, and our task. So this revolutionary catechism, in its encapsulation and pointed description of political nihilism, of sacrifice towards a revolutionary goal, very, very influential in revolutionary theory, beginning in 1869 when it's published all the way up through arguably until modern day. It was actually published in 1969 by the Black Panther Party as a supplement to their political ideology to promote the revolutionary asceticism, the selflessness that revolutionaries need to conquer their goals, created arguably by Nechayev and used by revolutionaries throughout the world. So that's Sergei Nechayev, arguably the most radical of the anarchists, the most problematic politically for the anarchists, the most feared of the anarchists, who dies at age 35 in prison from dropsy, complicated by scurvy. Dropsy is like he lost nerve function in his face, and so like half his face was sagging down in his prison cell at the Peter and Paul Fortress. Thank you.